Mycotoxins can be pathogenic to every single one of your organ systems. And it's one of the only, that's why toxins are very different in how they impact our health. And it can be tricky to identify that as a root cause because they can do a lot of system mimicking. So, for example, they can have, yes, impact on your respiratory or your allergy symptoms. So you think of kind of an individual who maybe already has weakness or a issue with their lungs, like asthma, or they have an autoimmune condition, or they already are just a very allergic individual. Wherever your kind of weak system is, mycotoxins can amplify that effect. So a lot of times people will be kind of suffering along and they'll say, oh my gosh, my thyroid is getting so much worse, whatever it may be, and they amp their medication, but things aren't working, they're not getting better. They continue to see their endocrinologist and they're trying new things, they're doing all these tests and everything is negative, they're not getting answers. So it's because when you add toxic exposure into the body, just like Dr. Tommy's stating, your body goes into an inflammatory response, releases macrophages, and it creates an inflammatory reaction that can lead to the development of leaky gut, of food sensitivity, of endocrine issues, and hormonal disturbance, which then has its own slew of symptoms. Mycotoxins also have been shown in a lot of studies to directly affect micronutrient absorption. It also disrupts metabolism and it can really impact your vitamin and nutrient levels. So a lot of people will come in and they'll get their blood work done. They'll say, oh my gosh, my D is super low. My calcium is really low, whatever it may be. I just need to hop on some vitamins. That's not the issue. Yes, vitamin and vitamin and nutrient deficiencies have their own symptoms when they become deficient. But there's a reason why they've become deficient. And removing that toxic exposure, healing that absorption, healing that metabolism is the first step, not just relying on supplementation and artificial provision of these nutrients for the rest of your life to get your levels on your lab to come back up.
I'd love to add on to that too. So when you look at leaky gut and exactly what is leaky gut, you have in your intestinal wall lining where you're supposed to be absorbing all these wonderful nutrients and vitamins, you have, let's call it small holes. Now, it means that the membrane that is supposed to be separating the food floating around in your colon or in your intestine into actually getting absorbed in your body has compromisations in it. Everybody to some degree has this intestinal permeability issue. Now, when it becomes to a certain amount of exposure, a certain amount of this permeability being compromised, then you get people who get diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, actually getting the leaky gut syndrome diagnosis. When you actually look at what's causing that, I want everybody, whether when you get inflamed or you get anxious or you get stressed, everybody has a different symptomatology that their body's going to present with. And I want you to picture a cup being filled up and call it ABCs that are filling up this cup. The ABCs are pro-inflammatory mediators, which can be from things that you endogenously create, such as when you stress, we now know you endogenously create these pro-inflammatory mediators. So if you ever hear someone say like, oh, my leg hurts when I'm stressed out, that actually is a very true pain that they can be feeling. And it's because they're filling up that cup toward wherever they're feeling that leg, and the extra endogenously created pro-inflammatory mediators, the ABCs, are now overfilling the cup. Now, that's a little more complicated than I wanted to make it, so I'm going to try to simplify it again. When you are experiencing a rash or you're expressing a rash in your body, we know that your cup is filled up with pro-inflammatory mediators, and just that mold exposure or maybe touching something that you're inflamed to, coming in compromise of that, it adds to the ABCs that you're filling in your cup. So mold is actually going to push the amount of ABCs being created to overfill that cup, and then you're going to express a rash. So if you are dealing, like our daughter was, a consistent rash, you need to remove all the pro-inflammatory mediators out of that individual's life in order for the rash to subside and diminish.
Yeah, and I agree. And with her, it was not just removing her from the environment. It was food sensitivity testing, a detox diet, removing and identifying those food sensitivities, refurbishing her nutritional deficiencies and identifying what those were, working on her microflora and her immune response. It was not as simple as removing yourself from the home, removing yourself from the source. That's the first step.
Yep.
The body is, again, fighting a long-term battle when you're exposed to constant toxicity of this kind. And identification is, of course, the first step in that journey, but it is a journey.